and thus I stand. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of physical strength. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of personal magnetism. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the power of self-centeredness and personal potency. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of the one at the center.
Hi, and welcome to The Seeker
and The Skeptic.
I'm Kat, and I'm the flaky, unpredictable, irrational seeker.
And I'm Rebecca. I'll be your sarcastic, grumpy, close-minded, skeptical host. Or maybe we should just be ourselves.
Sounds good to me. This podcast is going to dive deep into controversial topics that some may call new age or woo-woo, or just plain foolish.
And look at them with a skeptical but open-minded approach that will hopefully encourage understanding and acceptance from both the skeptics
and the seekers.
So this episode, we're talking about our experiences at Buddha Maitreya, the Christ Soul Therapy Meditation Center. It's a bit of a mouthful. Where we meditated in pyramids and almost joined a cult.
Almost. I'm still considering it. So you told me a little bit about this place because you'd seen it before when you'd been to Glastonbury.
We'd looked in the windows, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just seen this very strange, it's all white in there. And they have like these strange copper... I don't know how to describe them, almost like dumbbells with crystals in. Mm-hmm. And then the main attraction, which is these pyramids. They are the size, they're, I guess, like 5 foot tall.
It's like a tent for like a 2 to 4 person tent.
That's a great example. Yes, they look like a tent without the skin on.
Yeah.
And the poles of the tent are made of copper?
Yes.
Do you think?
I think it's copper.
Yeah.
And the poles, I think with at least the ones that we were in, you've got crystals strapped to them. So there are a lot of crystals.
Crystals and weird sort of geometric construction things with copper wire and all sorts. So we looked in the window. The last time we went to Glastonbury, we looked in the window like, oh, look at those weirdos in there. And this time, we're like, well, I guess we should become the weirdos.
Might as well. Yeah, it's funny. And it sticks out as a place on Glastonbury High Street because it looks so a little bit clinical. It almost looks like an art exhibit, whereas other crystal shops are, really busy and like almost kind of chocolate box style. They're just kind of packed in. This had a very different look.
Yeah, you have to imagine a high street where almost every shop is just... the windows are shoved full of esoteric knickknacks, like crystals and books about witchcraft.
Dragons,
everything. And just really cluttered and intense. And then this one building, which is not a shop type building, it's more like an old-fashioned house type building, painted white. And through the windows, you just see it's completely white in there and serene, and there's people in there wearing all white, and these strange pyramid constructions with white, very comfortable looking chairs in the centre. But we had no idea what went on in there really, apart from the sign which said Buddha the Maitreya Christ Soul Centre.
Just so strange. And I think this is one of the things that I'm not sure we were totally sold on definitely doing until I guess our second day. It was like, well, why not? It's actually, we went in, we spoke to the woman. It was very cheap. I think she had said maybe a tenner for an...
She said £10 for half an hour in the pyramids.
In the fancy ones. And I think you could go into the less fancy ones or just a chair for free.
Yeah.
And so I thought, why not? It's a way to spend a bit of time in the afternoon.
What were you expecting out of this?
Yeah, absolutely nothing. I thought, we've been shopping. This will be a nice, chill thing to do before dinner. Why not? Again, there's like not a high risk thing. I didn't have to interact with anyone, which is great. It wasn't one of our group experiences, which we've already done. So yeah, I thought it would be a nice sit down in what looked like, actually the chair didn't even look that comfortable, but turned out very comfortable.
I was mainly concerned about it just being a bit of a boring experience.
Sure.
Because I meditate regularly, but an hour or half an hour is quite a long time for me. I usually do 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really in the mood. I do it first thing in the morning as well. So I wasn't really necessarily in the mood for it, but I was intrigued by all these crystals and weird things. And what we haven't mentioned yet is you also wear headphones where the Buddha Maitreya, the Christ, speaks to you through those headphones throughout the meditation. I was like, oh, is this just going to be really, really boring? That was my main fear. And also, maybe I made a joke about it. And I was joking, but maybe it was in the back of my mind. That's why I made the joke that it's kind of a situation where you think you might be brainwashed.
Absolutely. I mean, when you see that much white anywhere, and you've got these so the one thing that they are clearly selling are those, you describe them as kind of like dumbbell things, but like basically different types of crystals wrapped in copper in different ways for all varying sizes. They really are like artistic objects.
They are beautiful.
And
yeah.
I think they all have different names, but I think the word Vajra came up quite a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're super expensive. So they're clearly making their money from these things. And I was thinking, am I going to spend half an hour on the seat and then walk out and be like, I need to buy one of these crystals? Which I did. No. So I'll just like dive into my experience. Basically, within about 5-10 minutes of me sat down in the chair, you know, I've got one of the kind of crystal Vajra things in each hand, got my headphones on, lying back. I think I had a blanket over me as well.
She didn't put a little blanket on me. We'll put photos up in our show notes and on our Instagram and Twitter of us in these pyramids, so you can get an idea of what we look like. But it is a very soothing picture.
Kind of like a dentist chair, but less so, more soothing. And yeah, within about 5-10 minutes, I felt like I was being charged. Like you would plug in a phone to the wall. That's how I imagine that feeling. So it wasn't, I think a lot of people say that they get these kind of nice tingling sensations when they meditate. Personally, I don't. I don't normally have much physical sensation. I'm very stuck in my head and I find it very difficult to meditate despite the fact that I do it very often. But this was totally different. It was an undeniable, consistent feeling of I'm being charged. That's the only way to describe it.
When you say it's different from the kind of tingling in meditation, have you ever had the tingling in meditation?
Like kind of, but it's like a 1 out of 10, and this was a 10 out of 10. It really is.
Oh, so it's similar but stronger.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And it's like my entire body, and it felt really good. So I felt like just fully relaxed. And in the same way that, again, these are things that I've heard of people describing in a good meditation. And, you know, you can't feel your feet or your hands. And
yeah, I've experienced that many times. Actually, it comes to me quite frequently in meditation.
It sounds so nice.
It's quite interesting. There's actually a Buddhist word for it called, I don't know how you pronounce it because it's Sanskrit. It actually might be Pali, called piti.
Oh.
Piti. And it basically is that kind of, it's supposed to be one of the first thing that happens on your way to enlightenment. It's a very early sign that you're on the right track, which is nice to hear. But yeah, it's that sort of tingly sensation you get throughout your body. And what I read, just reading around this subject, because as I said, this is something I experience often. It could just be that I have some kind of horrible health ailment I'm not aware of. But the general explanation is it's something to do with the fact that your blood pressure drops when you're meditating. Yeah. And that gives you some physical symptoms, which often are described as like a prickling of skin or an electricity feeling. It also reminded me a bit of, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, AMSR. It's a autonomous sensory meridian response. Seems like the sort of thing that you'd be fascinated by.
Yeah.
So I'll just read a little bit from the Wikipedia to give you an idea. ASMR signifies a subjective experience of low-grade euphoria characterized by a combination of positive feelings and a distinct static-like tingling sensation on the skin, akin to a mild electrical current or the carbonated bubbles in a glass of champagne.
That's literally what I had.
So this is a really interesting phenomena, and people don't know that much about it. It's one of those things that's like, lots of people have been experiencing this for a long time, but because it's so in your own head. It's so sensitive, it's so personal that no one really
Can't
talked
really
about
measure it. Yeah.
until YouTube comes along. And now a whole community has developed of people who experience this. And they say that the triggers are really interesting and strange things that you wouldn't expect. It's basically things that are sort of calmly satisfying. So a kind of platonic example might be like someone speaking softly and wrapping a birthday present. So you hear the crinkly wrapping paper, someone saying nice things in a soft, comforting voice. People often get it when they're getting a haircut. It's all about that, like feeling relaxed, feeling cared for, and hearing slightly whispery, lovely voices talking to you very nicely. Seriously, you should look up YouTube videos.
That sounds so great. Because what I like about that is that it doesn't require this intense concentration that I think meditation does. And any time in meditation where I feel like I'm, floating away from my thoughts and it's all very nice, I start breathing very shallowly, and it's almost like I'm efforting so hard.
Yeah.
Whereas it sounds like with a lot of these, it's pure relaxation. You don't even need to be very focused. In fact, you're like quite unfocused in these times. And that's how I felt on the chair. I felt like I could think about breakfast. I could think about different things, and it wouldn't really matter. Nothing was really changing my feeling of kind of mild euphoria and the tingly.
I don't know. I mean, maybe that's related to the tingles that other, like the piti in meditation. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But it's something that hasn't really been studied that much because it's only a phenomenon that people have started talking about fairly recently. But it seems to be there's something going on in our brains that makes us get this weird tingles at different times, and it's really strange.
It almost sounds like it's probably a side effect of various, feel-good chemicals, right?
Yeah.
But what, again, just to say what I liked about it was the fact that I didn't have to concentrate or effort. And so that's the big difference. And this is why I enjoyed this particular experience so much, was that I could just sit back. I was fully comfortable. And this is not like a meditation for me, because meditation, I'm generally a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit stressed out, trying to not think of anything. This was just really great for me. The guy who's speaking, so Maitreya, the Buddha Maitreya, the Christ, I found what he was saying mostly uninteresting claptrap, but it's not like his voice was particularly soothing either. I've definitely known people who have better, meditative voices. What I did like is that there was some like omming, there was some other like kind of stuff that was going on, which was nicer.
Yeah.
So I think he does do this meditation thing, which I think I enjoyed that a bit more.
It was, I noted down some of the things he said because they seemed interesting to me. It was very repetitive. This is a theme we're noticing when we do these kind of meditative experiences. A lot of people talk slowly, they repeat themselves a lot. Yeah. So just to give you a taste, this is some of what he said. The power of light destroys the appearance of glamour of the ghost in the machine.
Oh.
The power of light destroys the appearance of glamour of the spider at the center. The power of light destroys the appearance of glamour of the Messiah complex, which is rich coming from someone who calls himself Christ. I almost took the headphones off at that point. I was like, I'm not going to be lectured about my Messiah complex by this guy.
100%. I mean, so much of it was like that. And even listening to that then, I was like, it's not really saying anything. And I think that was true for him with Sven, our channeler. You wonder what you're really listening to. And I think a lot of it is up to your own imagination. And I think that's what I was probably doing in a lot of cases. Yeah. You take a word he might have used and then that you'll go down a path in your own head.
Yeah. But you were really comfortable. I wasn't quite so comfortable. My chair, I don't know, it had like at the place where your thighs, the end of a chair, the edge of a chair, it was all padded and lovely. But it must have had like some kind of structural pole or something there that was just, and it was just cutting off circulation to my legs. So I had to keep shifting my legs around. That was, not the worst thing in the world, but a bit annoying when I was expecting to be comfortable. And the other thing that almost drove me insane was I lost sense of time. And I was convinced that we'd been in there for or that I'd been in there because we're also, the other funny thing is we were separated.
That was quite surreal. I had the same fears, but, and they sound very similar. So, I personally was worried that we were going over time and my thing was, the woman's going to charge us a silly amount of money.
Exactly. I thought we were going to be stuck we said we'd like half an hour, please. And then she put us in our separate chairs and there were screens up between us so we couldn't see what each other were doing. And then we just sat there. And after about however much, what felt like eons, I heard voices that sounded like Kat talking. I was like, oh, she's left. And I've just been left here on my own. And does even anyone know I'm here? Am I going to be here forever? I do not like... I realised this is actually a big concern for me. I like knowing, when I go to a movie, I always check how long it is. I want to know how long I'm going to be in there for.
I was relying on, I was like, I know they won't leave me, but I did think I kept hearing you laugh. Like, so we were both hearing other people and assigning it to
We had like these noise cancelling headphones on, which were playing the Messiah, Christ, Buddha, Maitreya speaking to us, but they weren't the best noise cancelling headphones.
They really weren't.
So you could still hear a bit. And I heard a exchange between the woman who sat us down in our seats, where she was wearing all white, and she was lovely. She was a very serene sort of presence. We'll call her Hannah. So I heard her talking to a guy, I don't know who he was, and he was urging her to remember to get people's email addresses when they came in. Yeah. And that was really off-putting, obviously. I felt like I was seeing behind the curtain or behind the screen, because they were literally behind a screen, and I was just opening my eyes and looking around and reading some of the posters on the walls and just generally feeling like, should I get up?
Right.
Should I just felt like I don't want to. It's like my worst nightmare. I don't want to be a mummy trapped in this pyramid. That's
wow.
Yeah.
That is it. It's funny. My reasoning behind like not moving and not getting up until because I luckily enough, I think my recording stopped at some point, but I didn't want to stop the nice feeling. That was the only reason I stood there. I was like, for once, I'm feeling something nice in a relaxed state. But I do remember thinking, like something is off here. This is longer than my sense of half an hour. And it was. We were there for an hour in the end.
Yeah. That's amazing to me. Like, I don't know. I just don't understand how someone can not come and get you out after, if you say you want half an hour, then...
And we definitely didn't pay for the full hour. So,
no.
But she didn't seem to like mind. I just kind of stuffed some money in a box and we took off.
Yeah. I did feel a little bit guilty about that, but then also you should probably tell people when their session's finished.
Yeah.
And so Kat, her recording comes to an end, she gets up and then she pops her head around the screening.
Because if I hadn't, you would have
I would have said I am so loath to embarrass or make things awkward or anything. Right. I just assumed that I would be fetched when my time was up.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be the person who like jumps up. Everyone's sitting around serenely and like bashes the screen down and says, I'm done with this. So I'm just way too polite. I probably should have just got up.
No. It's funny, like our experience of meditating on Bride's Mound. I felt the same. I was like, I think I'm done. But clearly no one else is. And maybe if I fidget enough, then it will be obvious that I'm done. But it's like, no one wants to ruin a group experience. That's wildly inappropriate. So
this has made me realise that I should buy a watch and start wearing it for events like this. Because she didn't take our phones off us or anything, but she did suggest we put our bags down.
Yes.
And they had our phones in, and neither of us wear watches.
You're right.
So as soon as I'm divided from my phone, I have no sense of time anymore.
Let's start getting watches for these kind of wacky things. But on the whole, so you had an okay experience?
It was okay. It was boring. It was boring, slightly uncomfortable, and incredibly infuriating with the time thing. That really ruined everything else for me because I was so fixated on this time issue.
It's fair enough.
But and then we came out and you said to Hannah, wow, it felt like I was being charged.
And she told me that I even looked different.
Oh, she said we both looked different. I was like, I look pissed off.
It's like, I'm sure this isn't the case. But I had a really great time, and I was actually really looking forward to finding out more about this.
Well, I rushed home to research because I've wondered about this tingling thing before, and I was like, and you seem to think that maybe it was something to do with the Vajras that you were holding.
I thought because they had these little crocodile clips, they were attached to something, and so I was like, in my lack of knowledge about science, thinking they're actually sending an electrical current through me, just a mild one, and you told me that's probably not true.
The only reason I mean that's plausible. You could send electric current through people. I don't know why you would, or if it would be advisable, but you certainly can do that. I don't think it does any harm to send a mild electrical current through people, but because I was looking around and not meditating like a good cult member, I saw a big poster which explained how the system was supposed to work. And basically the Vajras we were holding, they're little copper dumbbells with crystals in them, and they are wired up to the mat, which is sort of laid out on the chair that we're sitting on. And in the mat, there's a bunch of magnets.
Okay.
So it's magnet healing. This is something like all sorts of people are trying to sell people magnet healing. The idea is that magnets create a magnetic field and then that affects your energies or chakras or something. It's a pretty implausible theory, but that's the theory that's going around. So I don't think they were putting electricity through you. And I also don't think that magnets would give you that tingly thing. I think it's more likely that that's just a brain state
effect, that
happens to some people sometimes.
It was impressive given that I'm not prone to it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if you go home and watch some of those AMSR videos and see if
maybe
it
that's
works
my thing.
for you.
Fuck yeah.
I'm really surprised you haven't heard of it. It seems like a you thing.
I can't wait to look into that. Cannot wait.
So yeah, I left the thing just a bit annoyed and, not really thinking that much of it, to be honest.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like it just seemed like somewhere people go when they've had a hard day shopping in all the hippie shops.
Right. And that in itself, so even if somebody didn't have quite the tingly feeling that I did, I do love this idea of having a place where people can go and chill out if you are in a busy place. And obviously Glastonbury isn't like super busy, but again, this introverted part of me, which kind of needs little timeouts. I'm imagining that, imagine if like a shopping centre or just even big office blocks had these little places where you do just lie down in a kind of dentist style chair, put some headphones on, listen to something nice and soothing for half an hour. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah,
I love the idea.
When the weather's nice, I've been known to do that, to just go and lie in the park. Like I'll be in the middle of gone to some city for a random meeting or something, and I have like 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go and lie down in the park and listen to some music and chill out because it's all getting a bit much.
Yeah.
And I think in England, you can only do that like for a couple of months of the year.
Exactly.
So having an indoor place where you could just sit down and relax and not have to buy a coffee or anything, just chill. I would pay money for that.
Yeah.
So I do think that's valuable. That's probably why a lot of people were there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I never heard of no, that's not entirely true. I have heard of Christ, but I never heard of Buddha Maitreya the Christ altogether. I'd also heard of Buddha, obviously, and I've heard the name Maitreya thrown around, although I didn't really know that much about the whole Buddhist concept of Maitreya. But with a bit of research, he seems to be like, Christians think that Jesus is coming back one day. And Muslims have this Imam Mahdi, who they hope is going to come back one day. Hindus are expecting an avatar of Vishnu to come around. And, the Jews are obviously waiting for the Messiah. Everyone's waiting for someone. This is a religious thing.
We like a sequel.
Yes, exactly. So Buddhists are expecting the arrival of another Buddha who will be called Maitreya. And this is where I'd heard it. I'd been in Buddhist temples and been like, who's that? And they say Maitreya. And it just looks like another Buddha. I kind of thought that just because every time I'd gone, who's that? And they'd said Maitreya, it was the fat Buddha.
Yeah.
So I thought that Maitreya was the fat Buddha, but it seems like he's not necessarily the fat Buddha. He is just, I don't think there's that much details about what he's going to look like.
It's maybe just at a different time when they had this concept, that's how people were depicting the Buddha.
Yeah. So it's all, this is drawn from the Pali Canon, which are the original texts of Buddhism. They think that Maitreya is a Bodhisattva. Bodhisattvas, the Dalai Lama is an example of Bodhisattva. They're people who've become enlightened but decided to stay. So usually when someone becomes a Buddha, becomes enlightened, they poof off into wherever you go next, nirvana, non-existence. But some very kind, lovely people decide after they've reached this state to stay and help the world improve. And Maitreya is one of those. The Buddha was one of those. The Dalai Lama is one of those. There's lots of examples of people like that in the Buddhist tradition. And the idea is that when the whole of humanity has forgotten the Dharma, which is the teachings of the Buddha, Maitreya will emerge and reintroduce the whole concept of Buddhism to the world. That's when he's supposed to come. And there's a certain, there's signals and signs to look for if you're on the lookout for Maitreya. So they say the oceans are predicted to decrease in size, so he can just walk across them, no problem. Also, he'll be born in a time when humans will live to 80,000 years, and will all be much bigger. So insects will be the size of our heads. Everything's going to be much bigger in the time of Maitreya.
Amazing.
Yeah. These are like the predictions that are made in the Pali Canon. So we're probably not, most Buddhists are not expecting him to turn up anytime soon. And just to confirm this, I had a quick look at the Buddhism subreddit and searched for Maitreya to see what Buddhists of Reddit thought about the whole concept. And they basically said the same thing. They said, Maitreya is not coming until everyone's forgotten Buddhism. And a couple of them had this interpretation where they were like, actually, it's all just, a symbol or a metaphor. And what it is saying that the Dharma will always be accessible, and one day, even if it was completely extinct, it would still come back in another form. And this is not supposed to be interpreted literally. But basically, Buddhists don't think
he's here.
He's here.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know what contact this guy, Buddha Maitreya the Christ, has had with the actual Buddhist community. But from my readings, it doesn't seem like they know what he's about at all.
No. And is there anyone else?
Oh, well, yeah, that's a funny thing. As I said, I hadn't heard the word Maitreya, but that's not entirely true. I had heard it from this group of people who'd set up a little table at some kind of event. I can't even remember where it was. But you know how sometimes people set up a little table with all leaflets and stuff, pushing their religion. And these guys were pushing Maitreya. I can't believe I forgot to mention this. Yeah. So they had all these pictures. I went over because I was like, oh, that looks interesting and unusual. They had all these pictures of handprints hung up all around their stall. And that's the main image that I remember being linked with them. And that's what I asked Hannah about afterwards. I said, oh, it's strange, because I was kind of expecting something different, because I'd seen these people at the stall and they had all these handprints. But that Maitreya lives in London, and you're saying your Maitreya lives in America. So
it's not the same guy.
What's the deal? And she'd never heard of the other Maitreya at all. This was all new to her. And she said, well, there are lots of false prophets out there. You have to use your own discernment, which is probably good advice. But yeah, the other Maitreya, this guy, the guy that I was familiar with, he's an interesting character because he's not really a character at all. He's this guy, Benjamin Crew, predicted that I think perhaps he received a vision or something, but for whatever reason, he predicted that the Buddha was coming back. And he predicted some really specific things about the Buddha when he came back. He said that he had dark skin and a stutter, and that he moved to London in 1997 to live in Brick Lane. He didn't say it is this guy, Brick Lane, London. He didn't say it is this guy. He just described him physically and said that he was talking through him occasionally in visions and stuff. And so their organisation, set up by Benjamin Crew, is called Share International, and these are the people I was talking to. And they believe that Maitreya, the Buddha, he's a space brother. Which is funny, because we'd just been spending some time with a guy who believed in Space Brothers the other day with a channeler. Space Brothers are like aliens, but they're not grey aliens. They're not the little guys with big heads and almond eyes. They're tall, blonde, attractive aliens. Anyway, so
the good kind.
The Share International is a group. Some might say a cult, and in my book, which I refer to as Dictionary of Cults, they are in there. The books, I call it my Dictionary of Cults. It's a big, fat, hardback book. I've got it out and waved it at Kat many times when she tells me she's bumped into someone interesting. I'm like, let's just see if they're in here. It's actually I can't remember what it's called, but it's about new religious movements, and that's how they're referred to in the book, which is more reasonable but less fun. I'll put a link in the show notes to the book in case you want to find it for yourselves. Anyway, so they're basically all about sharing the world's resources and being nice to people and trying to find their Maitreya, their Buddha, because they know he's out there and that he lives in South London.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they haven't found him?
Well, interesting. So he's appeared several times, but he appears in different guises, which is super confusing. So he appeared in Nairobi in 1988, and there was like a church service going on, and this guy pops up, but he looks a bit like Jesus. He has a big beard and he's wearing white robes, kind of dark skin, turban,
Stutter?
white turban. No, unfortunately not. He speaks in a perfect non-accented Swahili. Yeah. But that's Maitreya always does that. Wherever he appears, he speaks the local language with no accent, which is strange. Anyway, so he comes up and during the church service, and everyone just sort of falls on the floor and like, oh my God, he's amazing. Oh, Jesus, brilliant. As you would, obviously. It's said that there were thousands of people there, which seems unlikely in a small village on the edge of Nairobi, but whatever. So after he left, this guy, Mr. Gurnam Singh, offered to give him a lift to the bus stop, because that's where Jesus would go, obviously, after he's done his thing. And the news report that I read said, which, to be fair, was on Share International's website, so might not be the most objective source, said it will probably take Mr. Singh his lifetime to recover from the shock he got 2 minutes later after inviting Jesus into his car. On reaching the bus terminus, the man informed Mr. Singh to stop the car. On getting out, he walked a few paces beside the road and simply vanished into thin air. Yeah. So this
Wow.
guy has popped up in a couple of places.
Literally popped up and popped back
popped
out.
away in different guises and said a few bits and bobs. But mainly he talks through Benjamin Crew, who is actually now dead. He died a little while ago. So now they're sort of at a loss without him, I think, this whole group. But because he was so specific about what this guy would be like, the followers can't help but look for him, right?
Yeah.
So there's an interesting little anecdote that comes up in relation to this. There's a guy, he writes about food and the economics of food, and he's very concerned about kind of food justice issues. So he wants to make sure everyone has access to good quality food and all that sort of thing. Sounds like a great guy called Raj Patel. He released a book about economic systems and food, and he went on TV to talk about it on the Colbert Show. Unfortunately, shortly before that, Benjamin Cream had announced that Maitreya was going to give his first interview on American television, and that many people would hear him speak. And so Benjamin Crew said that Maitreya would not be introduced as the world teacher and head of spiritual hierarchy, but just as a man who had important things to say. And then this guy, Raj Patel, comes on the Colbert Show, and he has dark skin. He is of Indian descent.
He's saying
he
those
has a bit of a stutter. And it's right after he's just made this announcement. So obviously, everyone in Share International is like, this is our guy.
Obviously.
And this Raj Patel is obviously doesn't think he's the Messiah. And so he responds by going, no, don't be ridiculous. I'm just this guy. I'm just a guy. And they're like, well, that's exactly what Maitreya would say. Because it was foretold that he would deny being Maitreya because he just wants to come to people and give his message unencumbered. So every time Raj Patel says no, it just brings them even more confirmation that he must be their guy.
I mean, I'm just like falling at his feet just talking about him.
I think I think it's kind of waned off a bit now. But I read an article about him with an extract from an interview, and it said that occasionally people will turn up to his talks. He just gives talks about food security and stuff, important stuff. But there'll occasionally be a couple of people who come up and like prostrate themselves at the end of the talk. And he's like, oh, you guys again.
That's so funny.
So that's the Maitreya I was familiar
Yeah.
with. He leaves these mysterious handprints everywhere, often on bathroom mirrors. People photograph them and put them up. He talks to the space brothers, maybe is a space brother. Oh, he communicates via crop circles often as well.
That's weird. I don't like mixing worlds. Like, I wouldn't mix Buddha with aliens. Like, it's a bit weird.
It's a strange choice, yeah. But we've seen aliens mixed with Christian mythology.
Exactly.
So why not?
It is all kind of... It's not to my liking. I like to keep my aliens in their little spaceships. And
So I got curious about, like, we've got the Buddhist Maitreya, who, according to Buddhists, isn't here yet. We've got this guy who we haven't managed to locate him yet. I thought, how many other Maitreyas are there out there? I looked on Wikipedia and there was a list of 17 people who claimed to be the Buddha.
Currently?
Yeah.
Right.
So, oh no, that's not current actually, because it included Osho.
Oh yeah.
And Jim Jones apparently at one point claimed to be the Buddha. So, but this is an incomplete list. There are other Buddha claimants. And interestingly, our guy, the guy who had the pyramids, although Benjamin Crew also has those pyramids and uses them to talk. So that can't be a coincidence. Yeah. Our guy wasn't on that list, on the Wikipedia list.
Wow, that's wild.
So I was like, he can't be that much of a big deal.
He can't be. And I think that's kind of where I've settled. And it's amazing that he does have an outpost in Glastonbury. But then you think, if he was a bigger deal, he'd probably have an outpost, at least in London, right?
Yeah. So when did he start going? Because Benjamin Crew starts talking about Maitreya in 1975. Is that before or after?
So that sounds like before. Yes. Yes.
Because I think it's too much of a coincidence that both groups have pyramids, so one must have been
I think
inspired
Benjamin
by
came
the other.
first because
Okay.
I'm just realizing here, this guy, so this Buddha Maitreya the Christ, also known as Ron Spencer.
Oh, that's a little bit less romantic, isn't it?
He was born in the United States in 1951. Okay, so that's, and he didn't really start following his path, I believe, until around the age 30.
Okay.
Kind of like Jesus, you know.
Kawinky dink?
Exactly. And what we were told is that he was discovered at the age of 9 by some Tibetan monks.
Yeah.
And actually, this stuff isn't really on his website. There isn't really much about his past or his upbringing.
Oh, that's a shame.
But since then, he has apparently been recognized by 9 different spiritual leaders, basically, these Tibetan...
So this is what Hannah told us, that some Buddhists had come over to wherever he lived in America, South Coast, right? And identified him as a Bodhisattva, which is exactly what Tibetan Buddhists do.
Yeah.
Although I think generally they do it in Tibet or in India or in,
It's...
I've never heard of them going across.
Yeah. No, he might have actually been in another country.
Oh, yeah, maybe. I got the impression from what Hannah was saying that it was in America. But anyway, and then, but his parents weren't ready to let him go and follow his calling. So he stayed and then rediscovered all of this.
He did. And again, like what I was getting, at least this is just from his website. And he's basically providing a lot for free. You know, he's like kind of trying to give people food and clothing and healthcare. He provides free clinics and treatment centers in Nepal.
Wait a minute. What's he treating in Nepal? Is he just giving his magnet therapy? Because that's probably not what the people of Nepal
Good
need.
point. That is a really good point. He's saying providing basic medical services for the poor and those in need. So medical, I don't know actually. But in the West, he's teaching simple meditation, giving regular darshan teachings, and holding these weekly pyramid meditations, which I thought initially, which you can watch live, I thought initially they were free, but no, you do pay like maybe about $12 to listen to one. And yeah, he's also got these big centers which focus on meditation, self-healing, longevity and wellness.
That's what we saw pictures of in the centre. They look almost like spaceships.
They're amazing. And these are basically he calls Metatronics. That's his kind of like healing technology. So that's when you've got these things like meditation tools, the pyramids that we experience, the Metatron mat, which we experience.
Oh, that's the mat we were sitting on that were on our chairs.
The Vajras, which we had in our hands, pendants to wear, and sound therapy music. So once again, we're hearing about sound therapy, which is all the rage.
It really is, isn't it?
We've been
but I think like the centre, that they had a big photo of it, like a poster, and it looked, like I say, like a spaceship, but it was like white domes.
Yes.
And they were all arranged in a certain way, and Hannah was telling us that the way they were arranged was in accordance with all these principles of sacred geometry that made it a very healing space, and that's where they produce all those knickknacks they were selling.
Yes.
Sorry, those healing tools they were selling. And I said, because it looked so surreal and beautiful and strange, I said, it looks like something from space. It doesn't look real. And she said, but it is real.
Yes.
And I was like, okay.
She's very quick to point that out.
She's a little bit defensive about that, which made me wonder.
So things get weird when I was kind of done with the website. I was like, okay, this is all obviously going to be saying that he's like this good dude. But then I found this 2002 blog article from somebody who says they knew Ron in around 1983 in Hawaii. Okay, so he says he had not yet developed his Buddhism angle, so not yet claiming to be the second coming, though the roots were evident. At that point, he was exploiting the New Age trends of the time. Crystals and pyramids were all the rage, and Ron knew how to play them. He then, and this is not quoting, but he basically, the guy speaking, lends Ron his mother's diamond wedding ring and $1,000 for a stereo setup and to buy some more crystals. And Ron never pays him back.
Oh.
And around this time, this guy, Tai Situ Rinpoche, a distinguished Tibetan Buddhist teacher, he was visiting Hawaii and gave some lectures. And Ron claimed that he was a very close friend of this particular Rinpoche. And the man speaking, let's call him Dave, was very suspicious of the claim. And so he made an appointment with Rinpoche the next day. And he asked him if he knew Ron Spencer. He did not recognize the name.
Well, maybe he knew him as Buddha Maitreya the Christ.
Right? But when he described what Ron looked like, tall, heavy, with a limp,
Oh.
sorry, but he knew who I was referring to. And he responded that he had indeed met this person the day before, but that was all. He had no relationship or any other contact with Ron or any kind.
Oh, that kind of makes the claims about him being recognized by all those Tibetan lineages seem a bit even more suspect than it initially did.
And much more will also make that more suspect. So anyway, it gets better. So to quote again, I was losing hope of ever getting my ring or my money back. Meanwhile, bad things were happening to the sister of my friend who first introduced me to Ron. My friend, a girl, and her sister, and Ron and Ron's wife and child, they were all sharing a house, and that the friend was paying for. My friend told me that her sister was having an emotional crisis. She did not know what was going on, but we found out later that Ron had skipped town and that Ron had been sneaking into her room after his wife went to bed and was having sex with her.
Ooh, allegedly. Let's put some allegedlys around this.
Sure. And he claimed that this was for her spiritual benefit and used crystals and other magic objects inserted into her body.
Oh my God.
I mean, this is one report. There aren't lots of reports, right?
Yeah. I just the reason why I'm careful to say allegedly is because, you know, this is just
allegedly.
one person's story about what
It's
happened.
a
We don't
second-hand
know if
story
it's
as well.
true, but it's very worrying.
Anyway, the guy never gets his money back, and he ends this little comment. Even though his writings on the website are barely literate, there is some skill to all of his lies and distortions. It looks like he even has finally made it to the east to take photos with legitimate Tibetan Buddhists. I pity the poor monasteries that cannot possibly have the slightest hint about how he is using them and who he really is. Yeah.
I've noticed this because I spent a little bit of time in northern India, like going to Buddhist centers, Buddhist monasteries and stuff, and meditating with them. This was years ago, and there is a big gap between, because a lot of what they do is still in Tibetan, or if not Tibetan, then in the local language, and they don't engage really online that much, or at least they didn't when I was there, which was a little while ago. And I think I could go and take a photo with a Buddhist I met in northern India and say literally anything about him online, because the chances of him finding it and then being able to read it are so slim.
And it's the same with these certificates. They're all written in the local language, and then they're translated for us, the Westerner, who's like, oh, cool, it's got some squiggly writing.
Oh, so he has certificates, though?
He does, but...
I mean, they could be anything.
Of course.
That would be fascinating. I have a friend who learnt a bit of Tibetan when we were up there. John,
see if they even say
our
that.
mutual friend. Yeah, he can maybe have a look at those and see.
And also, if you find there's a link, people have to see this to be believed, but there's a whole website called BuddhistCourts-gov.net. I mean, anyway, there's a whole thing about the case Ronald Lloyd Spencer, this guy, and...
Oh, is this like an official court of the Tibetan government in exile that's looking into him?
That's what it seems to be.
Wow.
But I don't know how legit it is, even that site. But I'm like, there's a lot of effort that's gone in here, and there's a lot of genuine legal speak. This isn't just some dude ranting about Ron. This really is this big site where they talk about all these different cases. And here's an official email from the office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama regarding Spencer. Dear Ratna Henry Chia, I think he was the person obviously attacking him. Thank you for your email. I'm to inform you that the person you mentioned in your email as being a tulku, which I guess...
Oh, that's like a bodhisattva.
Right.
That's like the Tibetan word for it. I mean, they're not exactly the same, but it's similar enough.
He's never been endorsed or recognized by HH Dalai Lama. We had received quite a number of letters and emails recently and in the past regarding this, with best wishes. So, definitely the Dalai Lama does not recognize this. And I feel like the woman may have dropped his name, but certainly this idea that he's being recognized by all these different people. If anything, I'm sure some of them will be like, yeah, he's pretty helpful. He's paying for some this guy's rich, right? And he's helping out these monasteries. I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
But whether or not they're actually saying they're basically not saying that
it's
he's
almost
the
like he
second coming.
started this shtick back in the days where no one could fact check him. And it was easy back in those days to say, oh yeah, all these Tibetan lineages love me and they all recognize me. But now you can actually email the Dalai Lama and be like, hey, have you heard of this dude?
Yes.
I'm sure it did not occur to him when he made the original claims that anyone would ever be able to check them.
No. And I think the big question is whether or not he is knowingly impersonating the Buddha or he actually believes he is the Buddha.
Yeah.
Right? Because as far as I know, like both could be true.
What's your sense from reading through his website?
I think more than normal, I think he believes he is the Buddha, and I think he believes he's doing something good. He's clearly not a great businessman. I think he has a lot of money and is trying to pump it. He's trying to oh man, I mean, it's really hard to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really hard to say. And also when you look at his face, like I don't warm to him. Not like Sven.
That's a bit of an understatement, yeah.
And also things aren't cheap. It's not like he is giving away free or low cost things in the same way that Sven is.
Yeah.
For example. I'm just gonna like join the cult of Sven. But I would say that there aren't like a whole load of
if you want to join the cult of Sven, listeners, then go back to our episode called Channeling Angels and Aliens. Yeah, and you'll hear all about him.
But yeah, I don't think he's like a super bad criminal. We have that one story and it's like, well, we just don't know about that. And the other thing is he's not well known enough to kind of even have much of an impact, it seems.
Well, this is the thing. He didn't appear on the list of Buddha claimants.
Yeah.
That Wikipedia has. But I was so impressed by the centre. It seemed very professional. It was very big. Like, they seemed to have money to throw around, and they had these photos of even bigger, more impressive centres. So I assumed that it would be... I was like, oh, we'll just go and research him. There'll be loads of him online. He's such a big deal.
Yeah.
But it seems like he's really not.
I don't know where the money's coming from either or how he's making it, because if he's not a big deal, like, how would he maintain this business? He could be just in massive debt.
He could be, yeah. Or it depends how well he's doing at selling all those the Vajras because they're expensive.
And there's a pretty funny if you look up on Amazon, if you wanted to buy one of these things, they're actually, I mean, they're expensive, but they're actual big pyramids that you could sit under are fairly reasonable, I would say.
Wait a minute, what's reasonable in your world?
I think there are some that you can get for about $200.
It's basically a tent without canvas.
And there are so many funny Amazon reviews, like people saying, my tent didn't come with any netting. I didn't get any cover on it.
Should we put a link in show notes
without
so that people can go and buy their own healing pyramid if they wish?
At least check out the comments. But yeah, it comes back to, so I still had this amazing experience, right? And while I didn't find a cult to join, I couldn't help but wonder, is there anything to this pyramid stuff? Have you heard about pyramids being used to sharpen razors?
Yes, I've heard about pyramid power. This was something that was really popular in, like, I can't remember exactly where it came from, but I heard it sort of, sorry?
Egypt.
Oh, no. Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I heard this idea floating around when I was a kid that you could, if you stacked fruit in a pyramid shape, then it would not go off.
Yeah.
It would not rot, and all sorts of strange ideas about how amazing pyramids are. I don't think anyone's actually found any evidence or any even plausible theory of how that would work.
I watched a Mythbusters episode.
Oh, really?
Went back to the old school, and yeah, they couldn't get it to be, and they even, I think there's a still where the pyramids have to be at a 51-degree angle.
Oh, she kept saying that. She made a big point of pointing out that the pyramids were in at 51 degrees. And I was like, well, thank goodness for that.
She didn't make the point about they're meant to be pointing north. Because we're all facing different directions, weren't we?
That's true.
Anyway,
but what do you mean
that's
pointing
another thing.
North? Like, which corner is supposed to go north?
I can't even imagine. I guess one side, but with the Mythbusters episode, they were like trying to align them all facing north. Like they were trying to do all the things. Anyway, they didn't prove that it could be done.
I did read this whole idea that pyramids were had these sort of strange properties came from a guy who said he went into the Great Pyramid at Giza, the big one, and he saw in there a bunch of this seems very unlikely, and I don't know exactly when this was, but because I've been to Egypt and I did not see such a thing, but there was a bunch of like dead animals that had crawled in there, and they died, but their bodies hadn't decomposed. They were just perfect. But then I saw, like, oh, that's an interesting anecdote. I wish I could remember the guy's name. So I looked into it a bit more, and it seems that this guy had never been to Egypt. So he didn't literally go to the Great Pyramid. He had a sort of vision quest where he went, and that's when he saw this. So it's like, this is not only an anecdote, it's an anecdote about a dream that some guy once had. And out of that grew this idea that pyramids could do all these amazing things.
Wow.
Really weird.
I mean, you can definitely find a lot of information online where people are even trying to explain it. So again, we're talking about magnetic stuff, energies. So here we go. A large volume of magnetic concentration exists within pyramidal boundaries, which helps protect the human body from the adverse effects of negative energies and radio frequencies. Right, like those are just words used to bamboozle people.
Yeah, I mean there were a lot of magnets in our particular pyramids because there were literal magnets in there. But I don't think the shape of a pyramid is inherently magnetic. I don't know even what that would mean.
It also has a special property to deflect any type of cosmic radiation that falls on its apex, the pointy bit, downwards through its base.
Oh, so it like sort of slides down the sides.
Yeah. So you got that, kind of like an umbrella for the the energy fields. And then it also deflects all radiation. Sorry, that was the same thing. Sorry, it also has strong ionization effects within the body. So negative ions basically turn to positive ions. I mean, there are all types of kind of mumbo jumbo things like that, which I haven't seen.
It's so interesting. You're very quick to dismiss this stuff. Is it because it's using like sciencey words?
Yeah, well, it is, and it's like it's how it's done. So for one, a lot of this stuff is written with the worst grammar. It doesn't even make any sense. It contradicts itself. Like all of the websites I find just don't look legit.
Yeah.
And so I can't help but be like, some other person trying to. Basically, it's not packaged well.
Yeah.
And I think it could be.
Or at least it's not packaged well for you, because I think some people would read that and think, well, I don't really understand this, but then I don't really understand science anyway. So, and they seem to be using the right language. So, whereas you're more likely to look at it and go, I don't understand this. That's probably because it's BS.
Yeah. And it's also like, I know what a scientific journal looks like, and they're bloody boring, but at least they're usually written like with proper English. But, I can't help. Oh, right. And here we go. So meditating under the pyramid or just taking a nap under it helps to synchronize the 7 chakras of the body. I love the idea of chakras, but I don't really believe in them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I love the fact that they're kind of color coordinated and they all kind of signify something different. And you can use your imagination to imagine energy traveling from your base chakra, your ass, basically up to your head. And it's like a nice image to use for meditation. But I've looked into it enough to be like, well, yeah, and maybe it has something to do with the vagus nerve, right? So there is something to say that we have got this nerve.
I'm looking at you blankly because I don't know what the vagus nerve is.
It does just run. I think it's to do with the central nervous system, and it is real, and it's very responsible for our like parasympathetic nervous system.
It's like a nerve that runs up your back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's basically like along the route of where the chakras would be. So, I mean, you can kind of...
So is your spine.
Yes, true. It's just like ley lines.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's this idea that you could map many, if not all, of the points that people talk about in Chinese medicine, the meridian points, as well as the chakras, to like real parts of the body.
Yeah.
It's how you work with them, which I guess is where things get a little bit tricky.
Yeah, so last night I was giving a talk about skepticism, and someone at the end put their hand up, and often this question comes up where they said, but if it's not doing anyone any harm, what's the point? Like, why does it matter if my friend believes in chakras? This was this guy's example.
Absolutely.
And, it makes her feel happy and it's her way of understanding the world and I don't see what the harm is. And I said, yeah, I mean, obviously, if it doesn't do any harm, what's the problem? There's no problem at all. The problem comes when someone starts trying to sell her chakra balancing bullshit and ripping her off. Or even worse, when she gets a serious health condition and someone says, oh, those chakras you believe in, it's all to do with that.
Yeah.
And then gives them something that doesn't work and she ends up not getting better or getting worse.
And she does that instead of the thing that would have made her better. Because I will say that I really do have nothing against people using these alternative or complementary therapies. Yeah, complementary to the thing that has been tried and true.
So there's on the website, on the Buddha Maitreya the Christ website, I had a very quick look through there, and I found right at the bottom of one of the pages something that really concerned me, which is a testimonial from a guy who had a cancerous tumor, and the title to this is relating to their one of their Vajra type things that they sell. The title of the testimonial is "Tumor Disappears Cancer-Free After Using Buddha Maitreya's Shambhala Star Radiator." So I followed the link, and they go for the cheaper ones, $855 all the way up to, if you're really serious, $2,570 for these things. So I get what you're saying, like, it can't do any harm to hold some weird bits of metal and things if you have cancer. But if someone's already got cancer and now they're getting ripped off for this much money to buy something, which they're saying on their website made this guy's tumor disappear.
False hope, possibly.
It's false hope. And it's also just like, why exploit someone financially who's already in such a vulnerable situation? That doesn't seem very Buddha-like.
No. And if he's so generous, surely he would be like handing out these crystals to everyone, and God knows.
Well, maybe. I mean, you could argue he's selling these to rich people so that he can pay for his things in Nepal. Yeah. But I mean, the whole magnet therapy thing, like that's how they're supposed to work, through magnets and stuff. It's just, I mean, fMRI machines, they're big magnets. Yeah. If those little magnets we were sitting on had an effect, imagine what the effect of going to an fMRI machine would be. It would be crazy.
Maybe it's the intention behind things. No, but this is the thing. And like, it annoys me because I don't know if I'd love it, I don't really care, but it would be nice to see some of this stuff being studied by real scientists. Yeah. The thing is, even when I read the science words, I know that a scientist has not come up with these words. Yeah. It's somebody who's already convinced. And that is what I mean by the presentation of a lot of this stuff. And I really like it when I hear somebody who is a little bit more skeptical. And I think, I can't remember it all exactly, but the time I did read a little bit about somebody kind of using the idea of chakras and kind of saying, oh, well, in a way, you can see how it does map onto the body. And in that sense, like you could maybe use acupuncture and stuff like that. Like maybe there's something to it because you can kind of see how it might work. And if it's been tested enough with enough people who are like, well, I know it's some kind of positive effect. That seems pretty harmless. Yeah. But again, it's like, it's a sliding scale, and how far do you want to take it? And you could go into some terribly, Steve Jobs-y kind of territories, and it's tragic.
Yeah, it's interesting, that thing about if you, for example, acupuncture, if they do enough tests on it and it seems to work, then, whatever. Unfortunately, they have done lots of tests on it. It hasn't worked, acupuncture precisely. Maybe we'll do another episode specifically about acupuncture. But what it made me think of, there's this like... this thing going on at the moment is a rise of what they're calling science-based medicine. So, like, medicine as we know it is evidence-based medicine, which basically means you test stuff, and if it works, hooray, let's keep on using it. It's good. Seems very sensible, right? Science-based medicine is like one step better than that. So they're saying, yes, evidence that it works is very important, but we also want prior plausibility. Because the problem is that if you test something and you don't know what it is and it seems to work, it might be working for other reasons. It might just be a placebo effect. And that's a whole other episode to talk about the placebo effect, because I think that's
fascinating. That.
Yeah, and also there are a lot of misconceptions about it, which would be interesting to talk about. But yeah, so evidence-based medicine is test stuff, see if it works. If it works, use it. Science-based medicine is figure out how it works, then test it, or, you know, afterwards, whatever, but figure out what the mechanism is. And that's a really important aspect, because otherwise you're just kind of like throwing the dice and being like, oh, well,
if
that
it works,
seems to
I'll
work.
keep doing it.
Exactly.
And that's when you get stuff like snake oil and the tiger stone. If I'm holding the stone, well, look, Rebecca, there are no tigers around and I'm holding the stone. That's evidence-based,
Exactly. It's
but
not
bullshit.
enough to say, I've tested this and it works. You have to say, I've tested this and it works, and here's how.
Yeah.
That's what science-based medicine is about.
Okay, that's
and
really
it's kind of
awesome.
on the rise. It's like an up-and-coming thing that people are talking about around medical.
That's insane that's only just up and coming.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that's how things worked. But I can see how we don't really care that much. And I think even part of what I say about a lot of this stuff is, well, if it don't hurt you, and if people think it believes, think that believing works. Say that again.
Then what's the harm?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the placebo effect would be a good thing to talk about.
Yeah.
In the future.
So you, like, whilst we were in Glastonbury for this weekend, where we did several bizarre and interesting things, you said a couple of times how different you think your experience would have been if you hadn't been there with me and Paul, who's also kind of a skeptical person. So if you'd gone into this environment, do you think you would have joined the cult if we weren't there to say, please don't buy that thing?
Actually, no. I think a lot of these things I wouldn't have even tried. But that's more for like social reasons of like, oh, I don't know if I should bother with that thing. And what would I have done? In a way, like, so there are certain things about traveling alone that you don't notice. So I really liked, for example, when we're going around the Abbey and like we hovered around certain areas. And I feel like your kind of even a secular appreciation of this stuff made me appreciate stuff more.
Aww.
So it definitely wasn't like holding me back of all my woo-woo ideas.
Yeah.
I think with my thing is like, I'm only in the kind of like inverse of you. I'm only getting into this stuff. So I'm exploring it all.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, you said before that you've been picked out as most likely to join a cult. And here we were.
I'm so ready to join a cult.
I'm going to bring this up at every opportunity. But here we were in the meeting, because this is what cults do, right? This is why the Scientologists have those personality testing things. They beckon people in, say, do the personality test. It'll be great fun. You'll learn stuff about yourself. And then they come in with the other stuff later. Yeah. This is what Buddha Maitreya, the Christ Soul Therapy Center is. It's their little landing pad. Yeah. People come in, they get their email addresses, and then they get with the rest of the stuff later. So there's going to be some percentage. There's a lot of people coming in and out and just having a nice meditation, a quiet sit down, or just getting angry and not knowing what the time is. Yeah. But there are some people, presumably, that's what happened with Hannah, who linger and end up putting on the white robes and doing all that stuff. But you don't think you'd be one of them.
So I think the thing that changed my experience was probably presenting the research for this podcast, right? Because I was digging in a way that I don't think I was ready to join a cult, but I might have thought, okay, so pyramids work. I experienced it and really hung on to that. And I totally had a conversation with my friend, my most woo-woo friend, after this, and said, oh my God, the pyramid thing was amazing. And we only talked about, energy, man. Like I could totally feel it. Yeah. But because it was like, I had this experience and I can't deny that. But with her, I didn't bother trying to explain it. And I think unless I had the podcast, I wouldn't have bothered trying to explain it, but I wouldn't have looked further. Yeah. It would have just like joined the back of my mind as something, oh yeah, pyramids are cool and might do something. Maybe at some point I'll buy a nice crystal. Yeah. With copper wrapped around it. So I wouldn't have dug very far, but it's all kind of like getting stored in my library of, this is something that might work, which could come out at another time. Yeah. And I think that's the kind of like the slow burn effect. I think a lot of people, they don't join cults overnight.
That's very true. Yeah.
So.
And also, I mean, you don't just join any old cult. You find one that
really speaks to you, and hopefully we will. I can't wait to find one.
I think I take the piss about you being most likely to join a cult, but I think I'm kind of that personality as well.
Well, I think it's interesting because it's almost like you're physiologically designed more to join a cult because of your experiences with meditation. They're a lot more
I do have crazy
than
visions
mine.
when I meditate. Yeah, and I used to think that they were coming from something outside of me.
Naturally.
So yeah, if someone had caught me at just the right time, I like to think that I'm immune now.
Right.
But you never know.
You never know.
It could happen.
That's I think the safest way to think.
So would you recommend that our listener runs off to Buddha Maitreya, the Christ Soul Center, and goes in the pyramid, puts on a white robe, or at least like spends a little time reading their literature?
I think that if you're in Glastonbury, without a doubt, go to that centre. Have a sit down. Go into the there's a pyramid. If you were looking at the centre on the right at the back, that's the one. That's the magical one. That was my one. I think it works the best. It
Yeah,
was
the other ones are
definitely,
shit.
Yeah. So and definitely have a go. And honestly, if it was a franchise without the cult and they were just wanting to set up these little pyramid chairs, I would be well up for setting one up in Brighton.
Really?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think they're really like nice little introverty spaces to chill out in.
I do like the idea of nice little chill out spaces, but I would not recommend going there to anyone because it's a bit weird. And also the chair that I sat in wasn't super comfortable. And if you do go, please wear a watch because you'll just end up trapped in there for eternity, like a mummy. That's probably what happened to the original mummies. I don't know. I'm just throwing shit out there
there
now.
was probably somebody claiming to be the reincarnation of Tutankhamun, and wait, I need to brush up on my Egypt.
Yeah, I think we both do.
Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Let us know with a tweet or an email. We'd love to hear about your experiences.
Yes, please tell us what we got wrong. You can email us at hello@seekerandskeptic.com and follow us on Twitter @SeekerSkeptic.
You'll find the show notes for this and every episode at seekerandskeptic.com.
And you can find my skeptically themed comics at RebeccaOnPaper.com or follow me on Twitter @RebeccaOnPaper.
And I'm at Yogis Who Shave on Twitter, and you can find me bringing secular yoga to the masses at yogiswhoshave.com.
If you like what you heard and fancy supporting the show and spreading the word, we'd really appreciate a rating and review in the Apple Podcast Store.
Or tell somebody you know about the show.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
I am a point of sacrificial fire, focused within the fiery will of God, and thus I stand. I am a way by which men and women may achieve. I am a source of strength, enabling them to stand. I am a beam of light shining upon their way, and thus I stand. And standing thus, revolve, and tread this way the ways of men and women, and know the ways of God. And thus I stand. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of physical strength. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of personal magnetism. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the power of self-centeredness and personal potency. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of the one at the center. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of rulership and of dictatorship and of wide control. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of the Messiah complex in the field of politics. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of selfish destiny. of divine right of kings personally exacted. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of destruction. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of isolation, of aloneness, of aloofness. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of superimposed will upon others and upon groups. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of love of being loved. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of popularity. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of personal wisdom. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of selfish responsibility. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of too complete an understanding, which negates right action. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of self-pity. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of the Messiah complex in the world of religion and world need. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of fear based on undue sensitivity. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of self-sacrifice. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of selfish unselfishness. The power of the light prevents the appearance of the glamour of good intentions, which are basically selfish.